guess what? It's Nutrition Tuesday with the guru, Jamie Hayes. Over the last few weeks, we've had some fantastic sessions with Jamie. And I must say, I've actually been implementing them myself. I went out, I did my shopping the other day, and I made sure that almost nothing had a label on it, Jamie. So it was great, and it's been quite yummy. And I must say, without the labels on it, it's a lot less expensive. But I've had lots of feedback from everybody, so we're all chafing at the bit for today. So welcome, Jamie.
Hey, Steve, and hello to everybody that's online and everybody that's watching afterwards.
Terrific. Well, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about a whole lot of sugar, a whole lot of wheat, how to eat your meals, when to eat the meals, and some things that are perceived to be good, but really aren't and should be put in the bin. What are we going to cover today?
Well, I do have 3 lessons, and we're going to address really something, a bit of an elephant in the room. When you buy diet books or go to any diet program or listen to an expert, there's typically one thing that they just omit, they just fail to address, and that's alcohol. Another thing I want to talk about today is one tiny little nutrient that might help increase your survivability of coronavirus, because it's likely we're all going to get it, but it's a question of how well we fare. So there's a special nutrient that I want you to be aware of. And finally, I'm going to give a little exercise tip. So, but before we start, Steve, would you mind if we just reviewed a couple of lessons? Remember, I brought a plate here. Yeah. We did suggest the 1 plate rule, which is when, particularly for those people who wanted to manage their weight, and people who want to manage their health and their inflammation, serve your meal onto your plate. Take the plate to the table, enjoy your meal, enjoy the company. So, and versus putting all the food on the table, like smorgasbord style, where you just keep on eating and there's no means of tracking what you're eating. So that was what we, I think, I don't know what session it was, but we talked about the 1 plate rule. The other thing is, for those people who are pretty time poor, particularly when it comes to lunch, is you put 1 serve on your plate, it's like cook double at night, and put the other serve directly into a container like that, and put that container in the fridge. So that's going to be your lunch or breakfast and there's nothing wrong with eating chops or steak for breakfast, but so if you want to save some time, like halve your cooking time, cook double, particularly your protein serves, and put 1 on your plate and 1 in there. And the 3rd rule we spoke about was don't eat meals with your fingers, eat meals with your knife and fork, because fingers is pizza, roll, sandwich, fruit, things like that. Typically for many people, particularly those people with extra weight around their waistline, it's going to be too much carbohydrate. And remember, we said it's not whether it's good carbs or bad carbs, it's whether it's too much carbs for your body. And each person is different. So don't forget the knife and fork rule, particularly if, the first meal of the day, to get some protein in, eat every meal with a knife and fork and eat it slower, and put your knife and fork down between bites so that you give, and the reason for that is to give your body a chance for that food to assimilate into the system to sort of top up your blood sugar, because people, particularly when you see people struggling with their weight, they just hose straight into it, and it might take 20, 30 minutes before their blood sugar tops up, and they're still overeating, so they've just gone way too fast. So they were just some review tips, Steve.
They were terrific, and I must say the knife and fork and the 1 plate protocol, and also to be able to save some time and having it all ready to go. I've got a few of my friends actually doing that, and they say it's absolutely fabulous. And I was quite interested to, when we were talking last week about, for instance, my eating patterns and how we go into that period of time when we're not hungry, and how that actually allows the pancreas to relax a little bit and not create all the additional sugars that we don't need. And I've actually set a time now of eating at a time frame, and that's usually when I'm hungry, but I've actually put it into my plan, and I must say it's been good to be able to tick it off.
Fantastic. Well, you're developing good habits. That's what it's all about, you know. That's why we're coaching people, which is fantastic.
Terrific.
Fantastic. Anyway, so let's get into that elephant in the room. Now, if people like to take notes, you may want to write this down. And Darren, you're very good at a T-bar, you know, so where we write a list on the left and a list on the right. And on the left, let's write down food macronutrients, which is, so this is stuff that we put in our mouth, food and drink, never forget drink. And that is that all foods provide some degree of protein, carbohydrate, or fat. Obviously, most foods are a bit of a combination. Like a steak is protein and fat. You know, sometimes you get, let me see, protein and carb might be, you know, sort of lentils and things like that. They're high in carbohydrate, but they deliver some protein. So most foods and meals are a bit of a combination. So on the left side, we've got protein, carbohydrate, and fat. But on the right-hand side, we've got three other sources of macronutrient, which is what's available in your body, which is protein from muscle, and we want to preserve that. We've got the carbohydrate version in the body called glucose. And remember, your body can only store 1 teaspoon of glucose in your blood. Everything else goes into your liver and your muscles or gets converted into fat. And finally, you've got body fat. And typically that's what we want to target. You know, we want to target body fat. But I want you to come over to the list on the left where we've got foods, protein, carbohydrate, and fat, but we've got this other macronutrient called alcohol. And as you know, I mainly work with people who are coaching women 40 plus, you know, who want to lose weight. And I think that they, as well as men 40 plus, particularly in stressful work environments, they self-medicate in the evening with wine or beer or whatever. But, you know, wine is very, very common and against the stress. And that can really exacerbate, you know, their goals. Now, I drink wine, okay, so, but I really have measured portions. And I want to show you, this is from the Queensland government. That is a 100 ml portion, you know, like a 100 ml standard drink of wine. Now, let's say, you know, you go to the restaurant and they serve you a portion of wine and you say, gee, you're being stingy because look at that, you know, it's really down the bottom of a glass, you know. And and I want to give everybody a tip here. Whether you're at home or a restaurant, if you want to self-monitor, remember we spoke about, actually, hang on. This is a shameless plug. This is our Keto Fitness Journal. We've got a Dietflex and Health Inspirations version, but which is, we're biohacking, which means that we do something, we monitor it, and we see the difference it makes in our body or in our health or how we feel. Now, a tip I want to share with you, when you're at home, and if you want to regulate your wine, or at least start monitoring, is that you might pour yourself a glass, but measure it. You know, that's 100 ml, that's 100 ml in there. You pour yourself a glass, you enjoy it. Now, remember, one of the tips was drink water for thirst, grog for flavor. Water for thirst, grog for flavor. Do not drink grog for thirst. Okay, do not drink grog for thirst. So, you know, stay well hydrated. Have a glass of water beforehand. Now, you have a glass of wine. Now, let's say somebody says, oh, can I top up your glass? Can I offer you some more wine? Actually, my father always said, I think you met my father, he said, you know, a host never offers more wine because that suggests you've already had some. Do you want some more? You soak, you know. He would say, can I freshen your glass? Now, which is a really polite way of going about it. Now, if you let people freshen your glass, there's no way of self-monitoring. But if you say to the restaurant, no, could you bring me another glass, please? And don't take away my empty glass, leave it in front of me. So let's say you get to 2 glasses, right? There's 2 glasses. And then the waiter comes along and say, can I freshen your glass, or would like some more, or what like that? And let's say you say yes, all right? And so then you've got 2 empty glasses. Now you've got a device, all these empty glasses, to self-monitor your alcohol intake. All right, so that really is a tip. And you can do exactly the same at home. You know, your wife or your husband might say, you're just creating extra washing up for yourself. Yes, but I'm self-monitoring. And don't be surprised, you know, particularly if you're measuring it first, you say, gee, I really had no clue how much. You know, the other way of measuring is to don't throw out all those wine bottles, you know, save it till Sunday night and see how many empty wine bottles you got there, you know. So there's a way of self-monitoring. The other thing when it comes to wine, and bear in mind, despite all the hype there's been, there is no net benefit, health benefit to having wine, you know, or alcohol or whatever like that. So, you know, wine that delivers ethanol is a toxin, and I think it's somewhat dose related, you know. But and for people who are struggling with their weight, or who really have a very clear goal to reduce weight, we give them a quote by Saint Augustine in the 6th century. Now, he was accredited by saying, and you may want to write this down, I find total abstinence far easier than perfect moderation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know how people will say, oh, I believe this and that. And you say, well, how's it working for you?
So when you let's go back to the alcohol, and you're saying that the body can actually just utilize 1 teaspoon in the blood, and the rest of it will go into the body as a storage. So on average, do you have any idea of a glass of wine, or let's say a mug of beer, or a schooner of beer? How much? I think there's a fair bit of sugar that goes into that as well. So if that's not only, if it's more than a teaspoon, that's actually going to be putting on weight if we're not actually burning it off. Is that right?
Well, when we said a teaspoon, it was a teaspoon of glucose in blood. You got about 5 liters of blood, 1 teaspoon. So your body's got pretty sophisticated mechanisms to try and stabilize that. It goes straight to work as soon as you consume anything that elevates blood sugar, typically from the carbohydrates, but also wine. Now alcohol delivers both sort of carbohydrates and ethanol. So it has a bit of a mixed effect. And alcohol, from what I've learned, is burnt preferentially over all other foods. So if you really want to slow down the fat burning process, if you want to slow down weight loss process, make sure you have alcohol. You know, it really is going to slow it down, unfortunately. So the concept of having AFDs, alcohol-free days, is really good in self-discipline. If you can't do that, you might have a problem with alcohol. You know, and so, but if you know, and those people who really don't drink alcohol, you know, I think that's yourself. I don't think maybe I've seen you have 1 beer in your life. I don't know. And our mutual friend Casey Conrad, you know, I'm actually jealous of those people that don't drink any. You know, my son Ryan doesn't drink at all. So, you know,
I don't drink any alcohol, and I just the reason being I just don't like the taste. So that's probably a good thing, I suppose. But if someone's sitting at home now, not obviously at 9 o'clock in the morning, or maybe, and they're sort of a little bit isolated, not seeing their friends, they said, I'll just have a glass of wine. This is a really great tip, because if they just have a glass of wine, pour it with some water, and then leave the glasses out, you know, by around about 11 o'clock, they could have 6 glasses of wine out. So, and you're saying that if they're wanting to lose weight or keep in shape, and they're doing all their walks and runs, by having that extra alcohol is going to reduce let's say the efficiency of losing the weight.
Absolutely, it's going to put a halt on it. It's, you know, it's just a big stop sign. So it absolutely does make a difference. So, you know, when people are very target oriented, they really want to get their weight down, we say you're much better off just having none. And I hate being a teetotaler. I mean, I enjoy a glass of wine, as you know, but I've become much more measured with it. And you know, you want to have sort of time frames and things like that. But just measuring that glass, does make a difference. The other thing, and this is, Barbara Rolls, who wrote, I think, The Diet Cure, said that if you put it in a long glass, see there I've got like a champagne flute, it sort of fools the body. You think you're having more. Now, they are both 100 mils of water, if you can see that. So they're both exactly 100 mils. Obviously, this feels like a bit more fulfilling. And also, you just tend to sip out of that champagne flute. So that's not another little self-regulating tip.
I know there's a few people in the SAC last week saying, oh, gee whiz, look, I haven't been doing as much exercise, but I'm actually drinking a little bit more alcohol. Maybe some of the guys have some questions on that. So I can open up the question before we go to the next topic. Any questions for Jamie as far as alcohol and the eating with your plates and all that sort of jazz? So just put your hand up or just unmute yourself if you've got a question for Jamie. He's very open to answering all your questions. Have you got any questions? Michelin, nice to see you. How about Aubrey? Have you got any questions, mate? All good? No questions?
Okay, he's good.
Katie? Can't see you, Katie, so I know you had maybe...
I'll throw one out there if it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Darren.
It's a little bit off topic, Jamie, but if you can maybe cover it at some stage today. My daughter, Brooke, she's in year 11, but she's doing a year 12 program at the moment, and she is doing a topic which is what is the effect of a plant-based diet on athletic performance. So I said I'm just about to go in and speak to Jamie. I'll ask him if he's got any knowledge on positive or negative effects on athletic performance from a plant-based diet.
Right. Well, of course, there are different types of athletes. There are endurance athletes, there are strength athletes, there are balance athletes, I mean, Muhammad Ali, what type of athlete was he? Speed and power. And so there are absolutely different types of athletes, and their training needs, their performance needs are different. But it's really interesting. I'm not too sure that there is any magical formula with the notion of a plant-based diet. And that can mean different things to different people. Definitely in our previous episodes, we've said, eat fresh, which is, the no label rule. Shop around the perimeter of the supermarket. You tend to buy plants and meats. But does a plant-based diet mean you're not having protein? Because it's absolutely essential, because we've got, let's go back to it. We've got something called essential amino acids, which are proteins that your body requires. And we've got essential fatty acids, which are the fats that your body cannot make for itself, the omega-3s and omega-6. And so when we go for a plant-based diet, you've got to eat a lot of plants like a gorilla to get adequate protein. So a plant-based diet still needs adequate protein. Some plants also provide low levels of omega-3 and omega-6. So for instance, an avocado is a plant. Nuts are from the, from the plant world. They provide, fats in the plants. But the issue is to make sure you're getting adequate protein in that plant-based diet. There are increasingly people following the exact opposite, which is a carnivore, which is avoiding all plants. There are two reasons for this, that they either want to be on a very low carb ketogenic diet, or they have some dietary intolerance. They actually, when they eliminate plants and the lectins in plants from their diet. For 2 years, I was on a plant-based vegan diet. Unfortunately, I put on weight and I was falling asleep all the time. So that didn't work for me. So, and in previous episodes, I've said that when it comes to your daughter's body, or Darren, your body, I'm not the expert, you're not the expert, your doctor's not the expert, your body is the expert. So if anybody makes a change to plant-based diet or whatever like that, I'd suggest you monitor various things like your weight, your waist, how well you're sleeping, your energy levels, particularly if you're a student, your concentration levels. If you're an athlete, your performance level. Make that dietary change and see how it changes. So your performance might improve or it might go down. If it goes down, that's telling you a story. So, it's a very contentious issue. It's a fantastic question that she has to address. There's definitely a lot of misinformation around plant-based diet, and if anybody's seen the movie, it's not a documentary movie, The Game Changer, which is all about promoting a plant-based diet and keeping proteins super low. I think that's dangerous misinformation. One of the things that, if you speak to doctors and health professionals, they say that many people who become ill, even younger people, have low protein status, and particularly those who want a strong immune function. It's very important to maintain a optimal protein status.
What would be a way of maintaining an optimum protein status?
Well, you simply prioritize in each meal high quality bioavailable proteins, which typically come from the animal kingdom, which is meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. So prioritize those. In our previous discussions, we have prioritized protein to get enough protein, typically the size of the palm of your hand, and then surround that with plants. So I like to say I eat more green leafy vegetables than the average vegetarian.
and then you put your piece of fish in the middle of it. But is it also a good strategy? I think we discussed it last time. So it's about the fist worth of food would be your protein, and then you can put the leaves, all the things on the outside. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And the other thing that's, think about where the plants came from. Did they grow above the ground or below the ground? Above the ground tends to be the low carb plants, the green leafy vegetables and things like that. Below the ground tends to be the carrot, the potatoes and stuff like that. The starchy vegetables. And remember, in previous episodes, we've said that just like every person has a certain sun tolerance. If Steve and I hold up our arms, and compare our skin, everybody has a various sun tolerance in how many minutes of sun they can tolerate before getting sunburnt. Every human being has a carbohydrate tolerance from any source. Now, carbohydrates come from the plant kingdom, but some people can tolerate 100, 200 grams of carbohydrate. Some can only tolerate 20, 25 grams of carbohydrate per day. So you tell them to have a plant-based diet, it's got to be very low carbohydrate plants.
So how can they work out what their carbohydrate tolerance? I think you call it the ICT, the individual carbohydrate tolerance. That's what the Keto Fitness and also Diet Flakes does, that your company does.
That's right.
How do they work that out?
Well, I'd have to kill you if I told you that, Steve. That's a secret. No. Well, look, it's like an elimination diet. We just start at a very, very low carbohydrate level, and then every fortnight, but monitor exactly how the body feels, and every fortnight we increase it by 10 grams until that person stops losing weight. And with a coach to hold you accountable and give you all the tips and resources and recipes and food guides and things like that. Just as you, as an excellent sales trainer, and Darren, you hold people accountable and guide them through the journey. That coach makes a huge difference. And people are surprised. And increasingly, more and more people wear a CGM, which is a patch on their arm, continuous glucose monitoring, so that they monitor, if I have all the carrots behind you or the bananas behind you, how well your body responds to the glucose load. Remember, most people have 1.5 teaspoons of glucose in their system, and the body is always trying to self-regulate to bring it down to that even keel, so as to speak. So two people could be on a plant-based diet, and one can dramatically exceed their carbohydrate tolerance, and one could be completely fine. So the same, as we say, one diet does not suit everybody.
So somebody has been a bit isolated for a little while now, and they haven't been exercising as much, or they've been having a little bit too many glasses of wine, which they haven't been self-monitoring, which I think was absolute gold this morning. What is, let's say, a couple of tips that they could do, starting right now, that they could start doing or stop doing? We get the plates, that'll be one, they'll be using the knives and forks. But as far as the food intake is concerned, and maybe we're getting abstinence from alcohol for a week or so, what's something they could sort of maybe make some modifications, not going to rock the boat? Because, going cold turkey on sugar, some people say it's more addictive than opium. Going cold turkey on wheat, because everything we're surrounded with wheat, is quite difficult too. So, if someone wanted just to get a little bit healthier, maybe lose a few kilos over the next few weeks before we're cut loose into the community again, what could they do?
Well, Steve, I suppose you're sort of asking, the question is, do we go soft landing or do we go cold turkey? And we've found that it's much better for people to go cold turkey, but prioritize the protein in every meal. If they just think of, what am I going to do about getting my protein in the first meal of the day, whether you have 3 meals like breakfast, lunch or dinner, or 2 meals, there's no golden rule here, but prioritize your protein, because protein satisfies. And, surround that by plants, learning from Darren's daughter there, that's perfectly fine. But if you simply prioritize protein, it's so much easier. And also we sometimes, so people get enough protein in, we get them to have a protein shake mid-morning, mid-afternoon, like a whey-based protein, as long as it's less than 3 grams of carbohydrate per serve. So keep it low. So like whey-based protein is very high bioavailability. So it's a great source of essential amino acids. So and just keep it really, really simple. Remember we spoke about the Tom Hanks movie Castaway. And if Darren was cast away with his daughter on a desert island and there was absolutely nothing to eat, but there was plenty of fish in the sea and they learned to catch it and they learned to rub sticks together and create a fire and cook it. And they learned to shake the coconuts off the tree and figured out how to break them open. And because it's a sandy desert island, there's plenty of green leafy vegetables grow all year round above the ground, but because it's sandy desert island, there's no starchy vegetables grow in the ground. There were some fruits, but they're very low sugar fruits, lemons, limes, strawberries, berries. But they were seasonal and they weren't very sweet. When I say seasonal, just a few weeks of the year, we're told to have fruit every, 2 pieces a day, which is complete nonsense. And there's plenty of running water and there were eggs that birds laid and you caught some eggs. Darren and his daughter would be very, very healthy. And I'm sure athletically they'd perform very well. And if anybody carried an extra weight, it would, pretty rapidly go down. Their waistlines would go down.
Well, they actually on the program Survivor, all these people go out and do their surviving thing and they're eating all of the things off the land, and every one of them says they are feeling fitter and stronger when they come back, even though they've lost a fair bit of kilos. And I think it's exactly what you just explained. Absolutely.
It's like you're eating now. Now, Steve, talking about Survivor, and everybody's talking about the virus and things like that, and they're saying, trying to prevent, wear masks, stay away, social distancing, all that's good. But the fact is, many of us, now there are current estimates that 40% of Australians have already had the virus that's passed through their system. Because we're not measuring enough, we simply don't know. But there is increasing in the news evidence that maintaining a good vitamin D status can dramatically improve your body's defenses. Now, your body can create vitamin D. It's called the sunshine vitamin. Getting out in the sunshine, not enough to burn, but having a walking meeting with somebody, if you want to, walk and talk or whatever like that, at least for 15 minutes a day, exposing your arms and belly or whatever, getting a bit of sunshine there. I like to wear a hat because I've got terrible skin and things like that, but getting some sunshine. And there are some good food sources of vitamin D, such as eggs, sardines, tuna, salmon, and even mushrooms, So there you go, plant-based diet, mushrooms. So maintaining good vitamin D status, particularly as we get older, our needs for vitamin D go up, so to 10, I think, micrograms or something like that per day. So getting some sunshine and where your body can create its own vitamin D, and having good sources of vitamin D. Let me repeat that list: eggs, sardine, tuna, salmon, mushrooms. That's a really good part of a defense strategy for those people who want to maintain optimum, immune function.
Well, that sounds quite interesting, Jamie. I don't know if it's because that's what my body needs, but I do boiled eggs. I have my cans of tuna, and I like throwing the mushies into the frying pan.
Oh, fantastic!
I don't have the sardines though, but I don't mind a sardine or two. I mean, that's quite profound. That's a big rock for me. I actually take vitamin D tablets in a tablet because I notoriously are low in vitamin D. I'm inside a lot, and I got melanoma, as you know, and I was in hospital for quite some time getting it all cut out. So that's a big rock, especially as we go older. And they also say it helps increase the immune system as well.
Definitely. So that's, your body's immune defenses. So that's good. And for people with skin issues, you might ask your dermatologist about vitamin B3. There's some interesting research on that. But definitely, vitamin D is a very important nutrient. And just because you're consuming it doesn't mean that you're maintaining optimal vitamin D status. We're all different in the way we absorb foods. So if that's a concern for you, you might, next time you speak to your doctor or have a tele session with your doctor, they're doing that nowadays, ask them whether it'd be a good idea to get your vitamin D levels checked, if you get a blood profile or things like that.
Yes, I gave blood for medical reasons. I had to get blood profile every 6 months, so it's been pretty good. It must be all the mushies I'm eating. Look, I've got a question from Aubrey saying, why is 2 pieces of fruit a day a complete nonsense?
Oh, fine. Yeah, good question, Aubrey. Firstly, if we follow the concept that one diet does not suit everybody, because and that my hypothesis is, and it's only my hypothesis, but supported by many, many other people, that each person varies in their carbohydrate tolerance. And fruits tend to be very high yield in sugar or carbohydrate. There are some, like the bananas on Steve's screen behind there, they are very, very high in carbohydrate. But remember, there are low sugar fruits like lemons, limes, berries and things like that. But they tend to be higher in carbohydrate yield and low in nutrient yield. So what I encourage everybody to have is a high nutrient density diet that is low in carbohydrate and lower in calories. So that we don't go and swallow a cup of oil, for instance, which would be very, very high in energy yield, but low in nutrient yield. So and there's now question marks around the world saying the US dietary guidelines, upon which Australian dietary guidelines are broadly based, have these rules like 6 to 7 servings of cereals and grains, 2 servings of fruit every day. Now, I remember my grandmother, she only ate local fruits and vegetables that are in season. There was no way she could have 2 serves of fruit. She knew the seasons for apples, oranges, peaches and pears, and they were delighted when they got them or when they grew locally or things like that. But they didn't have the privilege of having, or forcing 2 serves of fruit, per day. But remember, my golden rule is that I'm not the expert when it comes to your body, Aubrey. If you simply monitor your health and monitor your dietary intake, if you make a small change, if you go from, there are people who are fruitarians, that go to, they eat nothing but fruit, but good luck to them. But I don't know if I'd recommend it. But if you monitor your fruit intake and see how your health goes, be your cholesterol levels, whether that, when people increase their carbohydrate intake from any source, healthy or not, often their triglycerides go up and their HDL goes down. That's not what we want. We find when we bring down their carbohydrate load, their triglycerides drop and their HDL comes up. So that's a good outcome.
So Aubrey also said, what's the ideal fruit mix?
Well, the ideal fruit mix, and to be honest, like I rarely have fruit, but my dear wife does make very low carbohydrate dessert, which is rhubarb with some berries. And I just have, like a half glass of rhubarb and berries with no sweetener at all. It's slightly sweet. I like that after a meal, but it's a very, very low carbohydrate load.
Okay, terrific. That's great news. Well done. All right. So
thanks, Aubrey. Great question.
Any other questions? Katie, I'm sure you've got one.
Yeah, I do actually. Maybe I'll just turn my video on. Hi.
Hi, Katie.
I was just wondering, so you talked about a low carb diet, and I tend to kind of stick to that because it's just easier for my digestion. But what I'm finding is that when I'm training, it's harder to, I guess, push further or go out for that extra 5K run because I'm just got no energy. Have you got any advice or any recommendations on how to? And also I train early in the morning as well before I probably eat anything. So
Sure.
It's really hard to probably hit a 10K or anything further than that.
Yeah, there's a great book that you should read called The Art and Science of Low Carb Living, or sort of low. There's actually two books: The Art and Science of Low Carb Living, and The Art and Science of Low Carb Performance. These are by the authors Professor Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek, Volek. Happy to share links with those. Now, they did some really interesting research. I'm glad you asked this question because they got a group of performance athletes, cyclists, and they put them on a ketogenic or very low carbohydrate diet. And they monitored them for about 2 weeks, and performance declined exactly as you described. They sort of ran out of energy. But then they decided, I forget the reason, and we've actually had Steve Finney stay with us as a guest, when he's been here lecturing from the States. They extended that study, and they found that the performance went up. And they used a term called they fat adapted, which means in the beginning of going on a extremely low carb diet, their body wasn't very able to access stored fat for energy. And it took sort of like a burn-in period, which was different for different people. For some, it's 2 weeks. For some, it was 2 months. For some, it was even longer. But before those athletes became fat adapted, where they could firstly exercise in a fasted state first thing in the morning and be completely comfortable as long as they're getting enough water, hydration, or they could do marathons, endurance, real endurance athletes who had fantastic improvements in performance because they were fueled on fat. As a matter of fact, I think there's a documentary called Fueled on Fat. So it's a case of letting your body become fat adapted.
Okay, cool. So you don't need to eat anything differently in the morning. Is there any food you can recommend to get the energy without it being a carb?
Well, your fast release carb, will come from carbohydrate. And look, I won't deny that there are many of the athletes that I've referred to who are in a ketogenic state, fat adapted, that during events they might add some carbohydrates, a banana or things like that. It depends upon the length of your session. So if you're just doing a half-hour session, you'll probably get away with it exercising in a fasted state. If you're going for, like a 90-minute bike ride, you may want to carry a piece of fruit, with you or something like that. So again, it gets down to listening to your body. But it would be interesting exercise for you to monitor your daily input and particularly how many grams of carbohydrate you do have. And I'm not saying, I'm not being prescriptive here. I'm just saying each person's carb tolerance is different. So you might monitor and you say, gee, I thought I was low carb, but I'm actually having about 100 grams of carb a day. So it's only when you monitor it, so that you make your body a project, that you can find out. And then, you can, see how your body feels in the morning. One tip I will give you is when we shop around the supermarket, all those low carb foods and have no processed foods at all, sometimes we feel like crap, because when we go low carbohydrate, your body does dump water, and we can move into electrolyte balance, because we move all those processed foods were very high in sodium. So it is important to maintain electrolyte balance, and simply by having some salt, sprinkled on your meals can make a huge difference. So that's something for you to consider. We're told don't have salt and things like that. The Heart Foundation says you can have a teaspoon a day, 2,300 milligrams. So we do see a lot of people when they go low carb, they forget about electrolyte balance. So that's something for you to pay attention to.
Cool, thanks. Also, would you be able to put that book in the chat so that I can...
Oh, yeah. Let me see if I can do that straight away. Chat.
And the bottom, Jamie.
Yeah, I got it. Yep. Okay. Also, Katie, if you go to, and I'll write this down, but a website, lowcarbdownunder.com.au, you can see presentations by Professor Steve Phinney and Jeff Volek, completely free. The art and science of low carb performance. I'm a terrible typist. I'm pretty sure that's Volek. I may have misspelled Phinney. Actually, I have. Yeah, sorry. There we go. I'm pretty sure that's it. But you can see presentations by Steve Phinney here in Brisbane and in Australia and in America and things like that, and also by Jeff Volek as well. So it's a fantastic book, and all personal trainers, and exercise physiologists should read that.
So make sure you cut and paste it and take it out of the chat box there, Katie.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so here's the website, Steve. Low carb and if you go to about us in lowcarbdownunder.com.au, you'll see my smiling face. So I was one of the founders, together with my wife Ellen. So anyway, but that's now run by an ethicist, Rod Taylor, in Melbourne. But the fantastic free presentations, and one on performance, which is interesting, Katie, is there's a radiologist, Troy Stapleton, in the Sunshine Coast. He's a type 1 diabetic, but he is an endurance athlete, and he discusses his performance levels. So Troy Stapleton, he's done a few presentations worth seeing on that very topic that you're asking about.
Terrific. All right. So before we wrap it up, it was absolutely a great session this morning, Jamie. Micheline, would you like to ask Jamie a question? I know you were ready to rock and roll last week. So had you got a question for Jamie?
Jamie, I started with a low carb diet about 12 years ago. I was a size 6 and I verged onto anorexia. And that was from a lot of emotional stuff. And then I was taking mainly stuff that you're describing, a lot of stuff that put me in a ketosis state. And I was doing really well and having water and having, I was sleeping so much better. I was feeling so much better and I was in my element. What I found working with Niagara over the years, that thing that I described of traveling all the time. And we have some really amazing events that go on with the company, summits and a whole range of things where there's a lot of the foods that I absolutely love are in front of me. So I started eating, but when I did eat back on my normal diet, I ballooned and I doubled and tripled after my menopause. So I've got a thing in my head that says to me, it's no point if you lose it. It was really hard work to lose it. I went cold turkey for about 9 months and it took me 2 years to put the weight back on. How do you deal with self-sabotage? And even the thought of going on a diet's got a lot of pain associated with it for me. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely, I would encourage you to think about having a coach, somebody who coaches you, that holds you accountable and helps you and supports you, and that you meet with every week, which can be online, of course. So definitely I would encourage you to consider that, and that can share tips and resources. I think you've got to have your own self-interest, which is your health self-interest, and you have to say hello to your emotions as well. I am no psychologist. I'm no emotional experts. We just guide people to if they are clear about their goals. And Steve is very good at goal setting, not just what you want, but what you want to avoid. And we can be asymptomatic, which means we feel healthy, but we're not. If we're putting on extra weight around our waistline, we could have, spiked insulin levels and insulin resistance and high leptin levels, and that absolutely affects our immune function. It makes us more vulnerable. So that's not a good place to be. So I would, you might also start, pre-planning and journaling. Journaling. Get the thoughts out of your head, so that, you're journaling. And if you don't do it for you, you might think of other people that are important to you, that you do it for them. And I'd like to, you look otherwise healthy, which is great to see. And here you are on the screen. There was one lady that was being coached by a friend of mine in the States. And she said her goal, she was a grandmother, she wanted to have a lap that her grandchildren could sit on. It wasn't about her personal health or anything like that. It was something deeply emotional for her. She wanted to have a lap that her grandchildren could sit on, and lost the equivalent of 50 kilos to achieve that goal. So that was her big why. And we've all got a lot to offer other people in this world, but we don't have the ability to offer things to other people unless we're looking after our health, looking after number one. So you can reach out to me anytime. I'm not your coach, but I can put you on to coaches and things like that. I'd encourage you to, it's all about self-respect and looking at the lessons from your past episodes, because most people who we have as clients have had quite a weight loss journey of ups and downs and successes and failures. So, you're not Pat Malone when it comes to that. But I absolutely...
I'll if it's okay with you, I'll just give Micheline your contact details. She had a couple of other questions with the that would be reference to some of the tools you use. So I might just connect you. Micheline, I'll just give you, Jamie, don't mind me giving her your number?
No, of course. Yeah, no, happy. And if I could refer her to somebody, I definitely will. Terrific.
I'll do that. I'll do that today, Micheline. All right. Terrific.
Micheline, I wish you every success.
Okay, one last question here, mate. Aubrey would like to know, I'd like to have an idea of a daily protein for procrastinogena.
Sorry, for who?
It's called a procrastinogena.
Oh, pescatarian. I beg pardon. Yeah, so, and I think we're referring to somebody who is mainly plant-based, but also has fish. Is that correct?
Yes, it's Jen has been a vegetarian most of her life. The only thing she does have is fish, and we're almost completely dairy-free.
Right, yeah. Which is...
But her question is, when it comes to protein, is one egg enough? Is 2 eggs? Is 1 tin of fish? She's trying to get the right quantity of protein in. And this affects me too. We've been together 2.5 years, and I was a big meat eater, and now I don't have meat at home at all. The only time I have it is when we go out. So we're looking at what's a non-meat way of getting the protein balance right. How much is in 1 egg? Is 3 eggs too much? This type of thing.
Well, females tend to self-regulate on protein. So if you both go out and there's a large protein serve, I bet you she'll immediately say, oh, I can't eat all that. and so drip feeding it throughout the day is a good strategy. If she can get to 2 eggs, I mean, an egg only provides about 6 grams of protein, so it's very, very light. Let's say she weighs, I don't know how much she weighs, let's say 60 kilos. You know, as we get older, our protein needs actually go up. We want at least 1 gram to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. So if she's just as an example, if she's 60 kilograms, she should be trying to target 60 to 90 grams of protein for optimal protein status.
Was
now,
that 60 to 90?
That's right. No, so if you look at breakfast, you know, 2 eggs is, you know, about 6 grams each. So that's 12. So she's got a long way to go, you know, from, you know, and if she can tolerate some dairy, you know, whey protein shakes are a good way to go, cottage cheese and things like that. But she's dairy free.
We don't have dairy at all.
Okay, yeah, like I'm dairy free too. I'm just become dairy intolerant, and you know, so beware of the fish. I would definitely, if you're having a lot of fish, do some research to make sure that you've got low mercury. You know, we've just got to be careful of mercury load. Particularly, I'm 67 and I had a mouthful of mercury, and you know, so. And you know, had my mercury levels read, so good, and that's very important for brain health. So we've got to. That's just another thing we've got to, you know, watch out for. And there are vegetarian sources of protein, you know, lentils, soy, tempeh, things like that. So you know, there are definitely other vegetarian sources of protein. But I just use the phrase in every meal and snack. Try and prioritize protein.
What about shakes?
Could you say that again?
What about shakes?
Oh yes, well, yeah, like that works for me. I have I do, even though I'm going to contradict myself, even though I'm dairy intolerant, I find that I can have a whey-based protein shake, and I can just tolerate that. So that sort of works for me. But there are also, you know, soy-based protein shakes, and again, the rule is that you know, she starts increasing her protein levels and monitor how she feels. You know, so the only true expert in her body is her body. So, but that's challenging, you know, to meet your protein needs. But it's definitely doable. Definitely doable. We have to. What's the rule? Study what you seek.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Aubrey. That's terrific. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. All right, well, mate, gee whiz, that 45 minutes to an hour went in no time. Goodness.
Yeah. And the last nutrient everybody should be doing is to protect in their body. We've got protein, glucose, and fat. We want to protect the protein, which is the muscles. And the best way to protect it is making sure you're doing some strength training at home or online train or whatever like that. So, you know, if you want to delay the aging process, make sure that you're doing some regular resistance training with all your body.
By the way, guys, Jamie actually walks his talk every time in the morning at, I think it was 4:30, 5 o'clock. Just on Facebook the other day, he's been doing his chin-ups, his push-ups and so forth. And he actually does it, a lot of exercise every day. So
it is the fountain of youth. I absolutely guarantee it. So protect those muscles. They are the sugar sinks of our body too, if we want to maintain, you know, as a contributing factor to maintaining even blood sugar, preventing insulin resistant, things like that. Very, very important.
Terrific. All right, gang, how good was that? And if you want to connect with Jamie, just reach out to me. I'll give you his number. And look, Jamie has some awesome programs that he's actually, I'm actually utilizing one of his programs personally with the training, with mindset, also some work exercise, and it's got some wonderful recipes. My mum and I actually are on it. So if you'd like to ask Jamie about that, I'll connect you to him personally. But Jamie, thanks so much for your wisdom today. It's absolutely outstanding. So I'm sure that everyone enjoyed themselves. Didn't you? Put your thumbs up, hey?
Yeah. And thanks everybody. And thanks very much for the questions. And for those people watching later, I wish you all every success.
Great. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Wow, nutrition tips are getting better all the time. So I hope you're taking some action. I'll be putting this in the sack. Put some comments down the bottom. and then make sure you eat. You are what you eat, aren't you? Okay, so I'm Dr. J, and I'll see you when you're a bit older. Bye for now.